Have you ever been given a promise so vague it sounds meaningful, yet leaves you confused and stuck waiting? This isn't accidental or innocent. It's a deliberate tactic called. In watching this series, you know manipulators use subtle psychological tricks to seize control. Today, we unveil how being purposefully unclear is one of the dark weaponized in politics, sales, and even the closest relationships. Imagine sitting through a meeting where your boss promises big changes, but never says when or what. Or a politician peddling slogans like "real change is coming" without specifics. At first, these ambiguous messages might seem harmless or even hopeful. But here's the thing. That fog of vagueness doesn't just obscure meaning. It actually manipulates your sense of certainty and trust. We all crave clarity and control. Vague promises create a mental limbo where your brain desperately tries to fill in the blanks, often assuming the best, but always waiting. This psychological tension builds leverage for the manipulator, each ambiguous statement extending their influence by keeping you engaged but uncertain. In relationships, it's equally effective. A partner might say, "I want to work on us," but avoids defining what that means or when action will happen. The victim spirals into hope or self-doubt, caught between wanting to believe and seeing no progress. This isn't mere poor communication. It's a weaponized tactic exploiting your need for closure and certainty. You might have dismissed such moments as annoying or confusing before, but now you'll see they're a core tool in the manipulator's arsenal. This is the groundwork for everything that follows, because strategic ambiguity preys on our psychological defaults to keep us off balance and compliant. Now, here's where it gets disturbing. Strategic ambiguity exploits deep psychological phenomena like uncertainty tolerance, cognitive biases, and the human brain's craving for closure. When presented with vague information, the brain tries to resolve ambiguity by filling in missing pieces, often based on biases, fears, or hopes. One key bias at work is the optimism bias. We assume ambiguous promises will turn out in our favor. This delay tactic keeps us hooked, waiting for something that may never come. But it doesn't stop there. Ambiguity also overloads decision-making circuits, triggering decision fatigue and paralysis. The more unclear the message, the more mental energy you spend spinning in circles, wasting focus and willpower. Manipulators bank on this exhaustion to erode resistance and critical questioning. Here's the kicker: strategic ambiguity also works as a smokescreen for plausible deniability. When confronted, a manipulator can claim they were misunderstood or deliberately keep shifting what their words meant. It's psychological cover built into the tactic. And the most dangerous part? It creates an ongoing cycle of confusion and doubt. Victims become unsure if their frustration or distrust is justified. A perfect emotional bind. This toxic feedback loop entrenches control, precisely because it stays hidden in the murky space between truth and deception. But here's where it gets disturbing. Let's bring it into sharp focus with real-world examples. Political leaders everywhere master strategic ambiguity. It's the hallmark of successful rhetoric. Think of speeches full of phrases like "a brighter future for all," or "we will tackle systemic issues," without concrete plans. These phrases sound inspiring but deliberately avoid commitment, so leaders evade accountability while stoking hope or fear. Voters end up trapped in a haze of uncertainty, unable to hold anyone responsible. In sales, strategic ambiguity is a powerful tool for upselling and prolonging transactions. A car salesman might promise this deal won't last long, without specifying details, pressuring customers to act on fear of missing out. Or subscription services. Advertise exclusive offers, with unclear terms that trap consumers in recurrent payments. This manipulative language targets your desire to not miss out and fear of making a wrong call. On the personal front, strategic ambiguity fuels toxic relationships. A partner who keeps changing their intentions or feelings destabilizes the relationship's foundation, causing emotional whiplash. Victims find themselves constantly guessing, trying to decode mixed signals, which creates helplessness and dependency. Now here's what nobody tells you. These aren't isolated tactics but parts of a broader playbook used interchangeably across domains. The same psychological mechanisms underlying political spin fuel toxic intimacy and high-stakes sales pitches. Recognizing this overlap moves us toward better defense. Now here's what nobody tells you. Here's where the story takes a dark turn. The harm of strategic ambiguity stretches far beyond individual hurt. On a societal level, it erodes trust in institutions and leaders, breeding cynicism and disengagement. When people can't rely on clear commitments, democracy itself falters, feeding polarization and apathy. In personal relationships, strategic ambiguity fuels cycles of emotional abuse and trauma bonding. Victims become trapped in confusion and false hope, leading to long-term mental health consequences like anxiety and depression. The tactic's persistent uncertainty undermines personal boundaries and self-trust, essential ingredients for healthy connection. In the business world, it corrodes ethical standards and consumer protections. Customers churn through confusion, making impulsive decisions based on incomplete information, which leads to financial loss and distrust in markets. Companies that weaponize ambiguity contribute to a culture where transparency is suspicious rather than expected. But the most unsettling effect is how strategic ambiguity normalizes deception. It teaches societies to accept half-truths and excuses instead of demanding accountability. This shift lowers collective resistance to manipulation across all spheres, personal, political, and commercial, creating fertile ground for more extreme psychological exploitation. And this is where the story takes a dark turn. And the most chilling part? Strategic ambiguity isn't just a tactic for individual manipulators. It's weaponized at systemic levels, embedded in propaganda, statecraft, and mass media control. Authoritarian regimes use vague patriotism slogans and deliberately conflicting narratives to confuse citizens and fragment opposition. Avoid ambiguity by blurring facts and opinions, fostering echo chambers where truth itself becomes negotiable. This deliberate obfuscation dismantles active action against abuses nearly impossible. At the highest levels, corporations leverage it in lobbying and policy crafting, using ambiguous language that hides true agendas behind complex wording designed to mislead lawmakers and publics alike. This strategic fog of words shields unethical practices and dilutes public scrutiny. Recognizing this systemic use is a stark awakening. If you thought manipulation was limited to toxic individuals, think bigger. Entire systems weaponize ambiguity to control populations, suppress dissent, and rewrite realities. This is the dark heart of strategic ambiguity, the psychological weapon that disorients societies as much as it manipulates individuals. Now that you understand strategic ambiguity's dark mechanics and vast reach, how do you fight back? First, sharpen your radar for vague language. It often hides manipulation. Ask direct, specific questions and demand clear answers. Never settle for buzzwords or platitudes that feel empty or confusing. Take notes if needed. Vagueness crumbles under documented scrutiny. Second, cultivate discomfort with uncertainty but avoid rushing decisions under pressure. Manipulators want you anxious and hasty. Build your tolerance for unanswered questions but use critical thinking to challenge incredulity. Third, watch for patterns over time. One ambiguous moment can be a slip, but repeated evasions define a manipulator's playbook. Resist emotional whiplash by grounding yourself in facts and boundaries. Finally, protect your trust like a precious resource. When clarity is withheld intentionally, consider distancing from the source. Like in prior episodes, emotional safety depends on predictable, consistent communication. By learning to spot the shadows of strategic ambiguity, you reclaim your mental space and decision power, rejecting manipulation before it takes root. The dark psychology behind strategic ambiguity reveals a world where uncertainty is used as a weapon to control minds and societies alike. But this is just the beginning. Next time, we'll explore how psychological warfare intensifies deception with covert tactics that escalate manipulation to new heights. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell, because the manipulator's playbook is far from over.